Barakata Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rucha Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is A Few Words on the Book of Daniel. And I'm just going to go over pretty much the first chapter, and maybe, depending on how the spirit goes, a little bit of the second chapter. See, how far we can get on it or with it. But the book of Daniel is a very important book to know and to understand, because there are a lot of prophetic things in there. Some have been already fulfilled, and others are playing out right now as we speak. And it's a very important book because pretty much the book of Daniel has, in a nutshell, the history of the world and the final outcome of the destruction of these heathen kingdoms. And that's why it's very important to understand that book. Hold on one second. And, when you go to these different commentaries, they actually, some of them actually, hit it right on the nail as far as these different empires, because the four empires in the book of Daniel are important to know in prophecy, because it tells us where we are today, and how close we are to being delivered, by Yahweh, by Shem Yahushai. So we're just going to get right into it. This is the book of Daniel 1. I'm going to read the whole chapter. It's a pretty short chapter, 21 verses. So I'm going to start off at Daniel 1:1. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And Jehoiakim was a wicked king. And Nebuchadnezzar arrested him and pretty much deposed him from that position and put his uncle Zedekiah up in his stead. So Zedekiah, which was the last king of Israel, of Judah, should I say, he was a puppet king, that was set up, by Nebuchadnezzar. All right, just for a little bit of history. So Jerusalem was besieged by Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, because it was prophesied that he would do that. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands with part of the vessels of the house of the Most High, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And these are the same vessels. These are the same vessels of the Most High, that later on his grandson, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it was his grandson or his great-grandson, Belshazzar. These are the same vessels that he was drinking from when the Lord came and pretty much destroyed them. The whole nobility of the Babylonians, should I say the Babylonian Empire, the Assyrians, and pretty much gave it over into the hand of Cyrus the Great, which pretty much had Darius, which was up in age at the time. He was a Mede. He was the one that actually took down Belshazzar for Cyrus, king of Persia. It says, and the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom. Because, see, unlike these devils, these Edomites, whenever these nations would see among Jake, they would see those that were gifted, in whatever capacity, they would set them up in certain positions. These devils, they just saw the skin color of Jake and they just lumped every Jake together. But you had different Israelites that had different skills and different gifts. So Nebuchadnezzar tasked this man Ashpenaz to find the most skillful, the most beautifulest among the Israelites, and set them up in certain positions. It says, and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace. And remember, our forefather Abraham, he was a very wise man. He was so wise that he would speak of certain things that certain nations weren't even acquainted with at the time. All right, like when he went down to Egypt, he spoke to them. I believe it was astronomy and something. It was two things, and they were their minds were blown because they didn't have that form of knowledge until our forefather Abraham went down there and taught them. It says, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Right. So Daniel and the men that were with him and certain other Israelites were taught the Chaldean language, which is pretty much, like a form of Hebrew. It's just different, probably like a different dialect. The water, brother. I thought it was math. The elder Gabar Yahawada out of Hawaii. Yep, astronomy and math. I believe I thought it was that, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to put my a proverbial foot in my mouth. All right. It says, and the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat. Now, the daily provision of the king's meat was pretty much, meat, carbs, liquor, things of that nature that pretty much cause inflammation in the body, especially overindulgence in it. That's why it was not something that you would eat or drink every day. It was just something that was done, certain times because there was a lot of inflammatory, things, should I say, inside of these foods / liquors, wines, and all of that. Too much of it. That's why you had something called King's disease, which was gout, which was the forming of uric acid. And when you feel that stabbing in your feet, your toes, and the big toe especially, what it was the crystallization of that uric acid, those little sharp points stabbing you. So it felt like you were stepping on something, but it actually was the crystallization of that was giving you that pain. Whenever you would step a certain way, it would jab you, and that was from, either too much liquor or too much meat or too many carbs in your diet. It says, and of the wine which he drank. So he, not only did he set up the Israelites, found the best of them, but he also gave them portions of the king's meat. All right. Which the king's meat is something of decadence. Decadence is pretty much, it goes into the word decay, and pretty much a decadent lifestyle makes you to decay, to fall apart even quicker. All right. It says, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. So he set it up for his eunuch to find the best among them, the wisest, and then feed them for 3 years, and all of that. And then after the 3 years, come and present them before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Yahawada, which Yahawada, Yah is he, or should I say Yahawada, Yahweh, thanks. The da at the end is a shortened way of saying Thawada. The first part, Yahweh, is the Most High's name. So Yahweh thanks or Yahweh praise. So these are the 4 that he set up. One of them was Daniel. The name Daniel is Danya Allah. Dan is where you get the word judge. And Allah is God. So judge of the power. Or Yahweh is the judge. Then you had Hananiah, which Hananiah was Hananya, which means Yahweh is gracious. This is the second half of John's name, Yawachanan. Hananiah, right, was Hananiah, which is the second half of John's name, Yawachanan, the Most High's gracious or the Most High's gift. When you look up the word Hananiah, right there, Hananiah, and John was Yawachanan. Okay. Then you had Mishael, which was Mayasha'ala. Now Mishael, Mayasha'ala, is pretty much equal to Michael. It's pretty much the same thing, just spelt a little differently and pronounced a little differently. So Mayasha'ala and Mayaka'ala both mean who is like the Most High, because the word Allah at the end, or El, is Allah, just like in Daniel, Allah. All right, so Mayasha'ala, who is like the Most High. Same thing or synonymous with Michael, Mayaka'ala. Then you had Azariah, which is Izariah, which is Yahweh is our help, or help Yahweh. Okay, so those are the three names, and I try to always remember these three names. Sometimes I can remember and recall them. Sometimes I forget, because I don't really like calling them by their Babylonian names. I'd rather call them Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, which those are their holy Hebrew names. Okay, so these were the four main ones that, were set up. Daniel, as you know, he was famous for being in the lion's den. This is a book about him. He wrote all these great prophecies that the Lord gave him. And Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were the three holy children that were thrown in the oven that Nebuchadnezzar told them to heat up 7 times more than had ever been done. And he took of his strongest men in the Babylonian army to bring them into and to throw them bound into the oven, and those men perished, but these 3 men did not. And when he looked in the oven, he said, "Man, didn't we throw 3 in there? Why is there 4 in there?" One of them is like has a look of the Son of Man, the Son of the Most High. And pretty much that was Yahushua there with these 3 men protecting them, and not even allowing the flames of that to singe their hair, to burn them, or to even have the smell of smoke on them. Now that, my friends, is a miracle. It's an inside joke, but it's true. That is heavy, to where not even the smell of smoke came on them. And that's just a testimony of the great power and deliverance of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai in the most gruesome and hardest of times. This is why it's good to read some of these stories, as a comfort, especially for the times that are coming. It says, "Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar." Now you have Belshazzar without the T. That was the last king, which really he wasn't a king. He was the son of Nebuzaradan, I believe the man's name was, the king's name, but he had got put in prison. I believe it was for like 10 years. And his son was a co-regent, or a regent, which a regent is someone that acts on behalf of the king. He's given the authority, all the authority of the king, but he's not really in charge as the king would be, but he's pretty much looking over, or keeping it warm for his pappy. All right, so Daniel's name was Belteshazzar. The last king of the Babylonian Empire was Belshazzar. All right, without the T. So Daniel was Belshazzar, and Hananiah of Shadrach, and Mishael, and to Mishael of Meshach, to Azariah of Abednego. That's why the most popular names you remember of these 3 men is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Which their names was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. It says, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat." All right. And this is very heavy right here, which we're going to get into that. Let's look up this word defile. Defile. The word there is ga'al. Ga'al. To defile, pollute, desecrate, right? Because these things pollute you because you don't know what they were sacrificed to. And plus, you know, too much of that food breaks you down. You know? To be defiled, be polluted, right? He didn't want to be polluted with the king's meat. And the king's meat should say akal or ma'akal. Let me see. King's meat. Well, here it has path bag, which is different from the word meat. Okay, it's a Persian origin. That's why path bag, portion of food for king, delicacies. And this is going to come into play, delicacies. All right. A dainty, that's going to also come into play. Portion, provision of meat. So let's go back. So let's read this again. So, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So, let's go from there. A couple of precepts that I ran across earlier. Psalms 141 and 4 is, incline not my heart to any evil thing, to practice wicked works with men that work iniquity, and let me not eat of their dainties. Okay. Now this could be used spiritually as far as wicked actions, but also it could be their dainties, because every empire they have, you know, they have the kings, the rulers, and then they have certain festivities, you know, banquetings, you know, certain foods that they eat. So these dainties here, you have the word mana'im yum. Mana'im yum. Now check this out. Mana'im yum. It says delicacies, dainties. Right? It goes back to the word na'im. The word na'im is to be pleasant, be beautiful, be sweet. See? Sweet. You know, like you have cakes and cookies and pies, you know. Then you have your meats, you have your breads, your carbs, you know, rice and taters and all that stuff. All that stuff is really really, that stuff, if it's eaten, should really be in moderation. But we're in hell. So what can I tell you? Okay, so let's going back. Let's read this again. Delicacies, dainties. Okay, which that brings to mind, which I wrote down on the list, the book of Revelation 14. Because this place here, America, is a decadent place. You know, it's a decadent lifestyle. Let's see. Decadent lifestyle. Decadent lifestyle meaning. It says, decadent adjective. If you say that a person or society is decadent, you think that they have low moral standards and are interested mainly in pleasure, which that's exactly what it is. The excesses and stresses of the decadent lifestyle. Correct. Now, when we look up the word, because just like if you just eat certain foods and you don't balance it out with you know, with salads and herbs and different things of that nature, it's going to cause the body to what? Decay. That's a decadent lifestyle. You know, people are always partying, and when you drinking, you know, your thing ain't about getting in your vegetables and salads. You talking about where the meat at, you know, where the bread at, where the rice, where the, you know, because you're not really thinking rationally. You just eat whatever. So decadent is characterized by or reflecting a state of moral or cultural design. And in the case of America, we're dealing with both moral and cultural decline. You know, a person who is luxuriously self-indulgent. Check that out. Which brings to mind the book of Luke. 21. And 34. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. Why? Because you're living that that decadent lifestyle. All right. Surfeiting is the word krahipale, which is the giddiness and headache caused by drinking wine to excess, which this can be used physically and spiritually. A debauch, like a debaucherous lifestyle. And that all has something to play in the partying, the having a good time, and the eating and the drinking, and the, not really, pretty much neglecting the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Destroy or debase the moral purity of corrupt, right? A debaucherous lifestyle, debaucherous diet, debaucherous lifestyle. That's why they push in music. When you go to these different clubs, they push adultery, they push moism, they push all of these things that cause a person to morally and physically decay. All right. So going back. So, and take heed to yourselves, at least at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting. Because when you read the Apocrypha, it tells you that you could eat meats, you could drink, but in moderation, which is easier said than done, of course, but we know what overdoing something brings, and surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, because all of these things bring what? Bring decay, and in that it brings what? Neglect. Now you see these people that are so caught up on drugs that all they care about is getting the next hit, or these people that are just straight up alcoholics, all they care about is getting their next drink on. They lose family, they lose jobs, they lose homes, they lose money, because their whole focus and energy is on getting that next hit or getting that next drink, So that's the cares of this life. And also, trying to, set yourself or dig in, here in this society. This society is corrupt. It will destroy you. Like the scripture says, it's polluted. So going back, so let's go back. Let's go to Revelation. I meant to go to 18. I don't know why I went to 14. So let's go to Revelation 18. Building on the word dainties. 18 and 14. It says, and the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee. Right, all of these different, corrupt lifestyles and, just the different things that people do here. And you could eat whatever you want. See, there's no moral code here. Stay away from shrimp, stay away from lobster, stay away from pork. Whatever your taste palette is, you can have in this society. This is why you go to these different restaurants, and no matter where you go, unless you go to a place where people do not eat that, eat those unclean foods, and they won't have it on the menu, but even then they'll have shrimp, and lobster and different things of that nature on the menu, which is still, corrupt. So it says, and the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee. Dainty goes into diet, and goodly goes into fashion. Are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. Right, because once this place goes down, this whole debaucherous lifestyle is going down. Oh Lord, brother said people even eat drywall here. God damn. Must be some shit. What is it? They got barbecue sauce on it or something? Shit. And paint. Damn. All right, so when we look up this word dainty, right, it's the word lipados. Lipados is where you get the word lipos. That's grease or fat. Like liposuction is when they cut you open and they suck the fat out, you know? Now, when you eat these types of foods, that's what happens. The majority of it is fat. There's really no benefit in it besides tasting good. This is why in the scriptures, in the law, it forbids eating, fat. Like when you have, when you eat your oxtails, the oxtails got all that fat around it, and Jake just slobs it down, And, I love oxtail just like the next man, but it's too greasy, And it's, it's hard to get nice, good chunks of meat out of it without getting into that fat, and many other things, goat meat, you have a lot of fat on that. Certain lamb, lamb has fat on it, and you got to cut away the fat and just eat the meat. Because it's lipos grease. It's things which pertain to a sumptuous and delicate delicate style of living. Right. This is the king's meat, the king's diet. Which brings forth, carne asada, which brings forth inflammation, pains, cancers, so on and so forth. And this is why, the scriptures, when it speaks about the rich man and Lazarus, it said that this rich man was what? Fared sumptuously every day. He lived a sumptuous lifestyle. He didn't never want for a meal. He never wanted for anything. Beautiful. This is a beautiful precept brother put up. Ecclesiastes 37:29, be not unsatiable, meaning you can't be, pleased. Be not unsatiable in any dainty thing, nor too greedy upon meats. It didn't say you can't eat meats. It says don't be too greedy upon it. Because Jake likes a big plate of meat and carbs. And then when it comes to the vegetables and, and things of that nature, they didn't want to deal with it. And you have to have a balance, It says, for excess of meats bringeth sickness, see? And surfeiting, which we just read about, will turn into choler, right? That pain. From what? From the inflammation, which eventually turns into disease, So the things which pertain to the sumptuous and delicate style of living. So pretty much that's what we're dealing with, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, right? Because this place, once it goes down, it's going to be over. It's going to be over. There we go. Beautiful. The elder is right on it. Leviticus 7:23. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, you shall not eat no manner of fat of ox or of sheep or of goat, because they all have it. The Spirit had me mention what? Oxtail? It had me mention goat and sheep. I didn't know it was, I knew it was in there, but I didn't remember it was in, these main three. And then here comes the brother right behind him. Boom. For whosoever eateth the fat of the beast of which men offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, even that the soul that eateth it shall be cut off from his people. And you know what Jake like, right? You go to these different like Brazilian, they got I'm not sure, if they have them all over the place, but here in Connecticut, Connecticut Rock, they have like these Brazilian, spots where you can, you got your, food laid out. You can pick your rice and your plátanos maduros, which is sweet plantains, Just had oxtail the other day, lots of fat, yep. And now don't get me wrong, it's good. You could eat it. You just got to know how to eat it, eat around it. But when you go there, right, you got everything. You got rice, different types of rice. You have your white rice, you have your, mixed rice, the yellow rice with the vegetables in it. You had, your plantains and, Then you have your meats, different kinds of meats you can pick from, which they eat pork and all of that. Then you have your salad bar, and usually the salad bar is pretty much full, except the potato salad. The potato salad usually gets hit hard, but like if you look at the lettuce and the tomatoes and all that stuff, there's very rare people eat that, And then when you get to the front, to the counter to pay for it, they have, bunch of meats that are being rotisserie. You got wings and you got your, your briskets and everything. And then when Jake go up there and they tell him, they cut, they say, well, give me some brisket, And then the guy said, you want the fat? Yes, leave the fat on. You go sit down, you slob that down. Guess what? That's a heart attack waiting to happen. Oh yeah, brother. You goddamn right. That shit is delicious. I love it myself. But I can't really mess with that. But those are the dainties. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with eating it. You just gotta be, gotta kind of pick around it. Because, it's a lot of fat on it. So let's go back. So Mana'im are delicacies or dainties. This is in the book of Psalms, the 141st chapter and the 4th verse. All right, now let's go from there. Let's go to Hosea chapter 9. And this is why these celebrities, I say celebrities, when I say celebrities, I'm talking about whether they're in music, movies, sports. When they get up to a certain position, they live that decadent lifestyle, especially if they never had anything. So Hosea 9:3, it says, they shall not dwell in the Lord's land. This is dealing with Israel, specifically Ephraim, but it also applies to the rest of Israel. But Ephraim shall return to Egypt, which is in America, and they shall eat unclean things in Assyria, right? Which that's here in America, because how do we know that this wasn't talking about in ancient Assyria? Because what was when we first got there, what was the consensus was, look, we got to get up out of here and go to a land where never mankind dwelt, so we could keep the laws of the Lord that we never kept, in our own land. So obviously then if they're planning to do that, they're not going to eat unclean things. So this is dealing with America. They shall not offer wine offerings to the Lord, neither shall they be pleasing unto him. Their sacrifices shall be unto them as the bread of mourners. All that eat thereof shall what? Be polluted. It says, for their bread, for their soul shall not come into the house of the Lord. Right, so everything that they do and eat is polluted. That's why in Micah it says, depart from her, for it is polluted. It will destroy you, even with a sword destruction. Because why? These things are offered unto idols. So if you're not praying to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai and doing what the Lord wants to the best of your ability, these foods that you're eating are really seriously polluted. You know what? Let's go from there. Let's go to Exodus 23 and 24. It says, thou shalt not bow down to their gods. And that's what Jake is doing here in this society. You got Jake going to these different churches, bowing down to sweet Jesus, a so-called white God. And then what do they do afterwards? They got their fish fry. They got their, different foods that they eat. And it's not just Judah. You got all the different tribes that do that. Among the so-called Latin tribes, you got the Pentecostal religion, and different religions like that. And they do the same exact shit. Eating all these abominable foods. And who do they dedicate it to? Sweet baby Jesus. Which is not the Lord. Because his name is not Jesus. His name is Yahushai. So it said, thou shalt not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works. But thou shalt utterly overthrow them and quite break down their images. And you shall serve the Lord your power, and he shall but bless thy bread and thy water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of thee. So the problem is, where we at, we're eating these pretty much these rotten foods, even the ones that eat, lawfully, they're still fucked up, So the Lord said he will take away sickness. Why? Because he will bless the food. That's why it says here in Hosea 9:4, it says, all that eat thereof what shall be polluted. For their bread, for their soul shall not come into the house of the Lord. Now let's go from there to Ezekiel chapter 4, straight to the point, verse 13. And the Lord said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them. Let's see what it says for defiled bread. Defiled. The word is tama'ah, unclean, impure, ethically and religiously, ritually, of places, right? Because there was a certain way that everything was prepared, All right, so now let's go back to Daniel 1, and let's just read again, 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. See? Now the Most High had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. So here comes the Mose. See? Daniel had a homosexual relationship with the master of the eunuch. No. Here it is. The man didn't want to defile himself with the king's food, but he going to be a Mo? My goodness. Anything to justify that filth, And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Your kind of people. Fuck you, you people. Inside joke. It says, then shall you make me endanger my head to the king. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So this is another man underneath the eunuch, Ashpenaz, I believe his name was. This is Melzar, and he was given the charge over these men here. It says, prove thy servant, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. So let's go to the word pulse. Pulse is the word zara'ain. Now keep that in mind, because this is heavy. Zara'ain. Right? It says vegetables as what? Sown. Keep that in mind. Something sown only in the plural. An example of vegetable as food, pulse. All right. Now, when we go to the root word of zara'ain, it goes back to the root word of what? Zarai. Which what is zarai? Seed. So the pulse are what? Things that are sown. Like different types of vegetables. All right. And that's what the eunuch's servant brought to Daniel and to the men that were with him, which is biblical, because this is how we ate in the beginning. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 29, it says, and the power said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding what? Seed. To you it shall be for meat. So what we ate back then were green herbs, fruits, vegetables, things that grew of the earth. And when we go to the word yielding seed is the word what? Zerai, which was the root word to the word pulse that we read of in the book of Daniel, the first chapter. Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat. Now let's go from there to the book of Psalms 104 and 14. And it says, he causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, not to smoke it, man. You know, I mean, it doesn't say you can't smoke weed in the scriptures. That is true. You can't smoke it, you know, but there, and then again, too, there's no instance where you're going to find, and thus that day did so-and-so light up a chalice, you know, and got high, you know. You're not going to find that, you know. It says that he may bring forth food out of the earth. That is the service of man, to bring out food out of the earth, because that's how it was in the beginning. All right, let's look up this word service. The word service is ibadah, which goes back to the word ibad, which means servant. Labor, service, labor, work. All right. So let's go from there, because the very first time that meat was introduced as food was in Genesis, the 9th chapter, after the flood. Prior to the flood, nobody ate meat. Everybody ate fruits and vegetables and vegetations and legumes and, you know, and nuts and seeds and herbs, you know, different things of that nature. You know, they drank water, wine, you know. So it says, Genesis 9:3, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Now, here come a simple-ass Christian. See, the pig moves, right? Don't scrimp move. Lobster and all that, they move, right? Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. No, because when you go back to the 7th chapter, it speaks about, and that actually even the end of the 6th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, into the 7th chapter, it speaks about clean and unclean animals. And the clean animals, matter of fact, let's go to it. Let's go to Genesis, because I was going to go over this if the Spirit would have jumped on me to do another, a few words on the book of Genesis. But we could go through it right now. It says, Genesis 7:1, and the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens. Plural, sevens. What does that mean? Sevens, plural, is what? 7 times 2, which is what? 14. The male and his female. So 7 male and 7 female, which is 14 of what? Clean beast. Every clean beast. And of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. So there was only 2. Now, why is that? Because the unclean animals were not to be eaten. They were just to clean up the earth, so on and so forth. But the clean animals were used for sacrifice to the Lord, and they were also used to eat. And that's what would be established once the flood went away and the earth started to be repopulated again. Because this is the very first time when food was introduced. So every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you is talking about clean animals, clean birds, clean fish, clean creeping things. Because you have clean creeping things and unclean creeping things. All right? Even as the green herb have I given you all things. So that was the first time the Lord instituted the eating of meat. All right? So going back to Daniel, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. It says, then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved in what? 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which eat of the portion of the king's meat. Why? Because they were healthier. because they weren't being polluted with all these debaucherous foods that the king was given. And I'm sure they were eating, clean beasts, even though it doesn't say, because they were following the dietary law, but their overindulgence in those things they weren't looking as healthy as Daniel and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They weren't looking as healthy as them. And even in that, they were looking healthy and even fatter, because they were healthier. All right. Thus Melchizar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them what? Pulse. So they gave them pulse to eat and water to drink. And I looked this word pulse up earlier. Pulse. I forget how I put. I think I put pulse food. It says pulse, the superfood you've never heard of. There was something I had read earlier. Was it pulse for food? Yeah, a pulse is the edible seed from a legume plant, which is where you get your beans from. Pulses include beans, lentils, and peas. For example, a pea pod is a legume, but the pea inside the pod is the pulse. But it also goes into, because it says right here, what is the biblical food pulse? Technically, only vegetables and water are listed in the scripture. That's right. But the word pulse in the King James Version is defined as vegetable food in general, which means you can also have fruit, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and other plant-based foods. Right, because when we read the definition of the word pulse, right, the word went back to Zara'ain, which goes back to the word Zerai, which means seed. And in the book of Genesis, the first chapter, right, it said that it says, and to every beast of the earth, and the power said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, see, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, because in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for me. So fruits, vegetables, different flowers, different things out there that you could eat. Roots, root vegetables. So anything that grew with seeds in it that you could eat, that wasn't poisonous. So going back, that was it on that. So it says, as for these 4 children, the Most High gave them knowledge and skill in learning, in all learning and wisdom. See? So who gave it to them? The Lord gave it to them. Did they get it themselves? No. So it don't matter how much, you want this. It's got to be given to you. It's not of him that runneth or of him that willeth, but of the Most High that giveth liberally. It's Yahweh Bashem Yahushua that gives it, because it's a gift. It says, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So on top of giving him all his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, he also gave him the ability to understand visions and dreams and to interpret them. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. See? So you had to be, and you got to remember, these kings back then wasn't like your Joe Bidens today. Tripping up the stairway to heaven. They wasn't bumbling idiots. They were deep thinkers. They were wise kings. They were knowledgeable. They study. They had the people, to their servants, bring them, the chronicles of the books of their history, or chronicles of other books of different people's histories to learn more about those peoples. They weren't dummies. All right. It wasn't your typical, George Bush Jr., and George Bush Sr. and other, buffoons like that. So for them to be able to stand in the presence of the king and commune and talk with the king, that was saying something. There's a scripture, I believe that's in the book of Proverbs, that deals with, when you come before a king or something like that, but I can't think of it right now. It says, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. It says, and Daniel continued even unto the first year of the king of Cyrus. Now, this is heavy because the king proved them. He found them 10 times better than any of his other wise men from any other nation in his whole realm. But yet, in the next chapter, when he had that vision that he forgot and nobody could break it down to him, he didn't remember to go to Daniel, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. He just commanded all of them to be put to death. The wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the child. He just wanted them all dead. Because that was the moment, once again, that the Lord, set up Daniel and the men with him. And then Daniel went before the king and broke the dream down to him. Not only did he break the dream down and gave the interpretation of it, but he also was able to recall back the dream that nobody else was able to, not even the king himself. That shows you the great power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And that's why Daniel blessed him. I said, oh Lord, that revealeth secrets. They go to brother. All right, let's go. Proverbs 23:1. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, beautiful, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat, if thou be a man given to appetite. Right. And these men, that sat before the king, they were being interrogated. And the king was hitting them with all different kind of things, different type of questions, and they were just firing back. Rapid fire, boom, 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 which shows you that this king, in order for him to establish that they were wise and 10 times wiser than the rest of the wise men of his kingdom, he had to be a wise king. You see? You can't read the scriptures and think, Joe Biden ruling, back then, as one of them kings sitting on the throne. I mean, he was back there as more than likely Antiochus Epiphanes, that devil, But these kings back then were very wise. All right, so pretty much, we could leave it there. I was going to go into the second chapter, but, this took a little longer than I expected. But it's all the Spirit, Barakatah Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, for the inspiration. And I pray with that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.